Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this live demo of GitLab Enterprise Edition Premium. We're so excited to have you all on. We're going to give people just a couple of minutes to join, but in the meantime, I'll introduce myself. My name is Emily. I'm on the content team at GitLab, and I'll be one of your hosts today, along with Victor, our solutions architect, whom you'll meet in a moment. While we're waiting, we want to get an idea of how familiar everyone is with GitLab. So shortly, you should see a poll appear on your screen. Hopefully you can see that now. So please go ahead and let us know if you've used GitLab before or if you're brand new to us today. I'll leave just about a minute for people to answer. Great, thanks so much to everyone who answered the poll. Before we get started, I'm going to cover just a couple of housekeeping items. First, please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. You can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen for that. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, you can use the chat function to get in touch with a moderator. In this case, that's me also, for help. And now I'll pass it along to GitLab Solutions Architect, Victor Hernandez.
Thank you very much, Emily, and hello, everyone. This is Victor Hernandez. As Emily mentioned, I'm a solutions architect here at GitLab. And today I'm going to provide you with a high-level overview of GitLab, some of its most notable capabilities, and most importantly, why GitLab is a premier solution enabling the full software development lifecycle. Our agenda is simple. After a brief introduction, we will go over a demonstration of GitLab with a simple example of taking an idea to production, so from concept to delivery. I will then spend a few minutes sharing with you what many customers believe is the business value or what they achieve with GitLab, with our platform, and with the capabilities in the Enterprise Edition. And we certainly will have dedicated time for questions and comments, as Emily mentioned. But please, throughout the demonstration, post your questions in the Q&A panel as we go through this. So let's get started. As a point of reference, I'm showing you the following graphic. It is called the frenzy slide. And as a brief comment on the frenzy slide, this is actually something that one of our customers with whom I worked with in the past, that's what they called it, the frenzy slide. It is not meant to show something that is askew or totally out of the ordinary, but by and large, it shows what many organizations have in place. A pipeline, a delivery pipeline with a number of different interconnected systems for version control, for automated testing, for complex build and deploy configurations, and for end-to-end visibility and traceability. While there's nothing wrong with putting such an ecosystem together, with such a degree of complexity, there is certainly a high cost of ensuring that all the pieces are working well. And as I mentioned, I'm calling it a frenzy slide as per that customer. Just think about this as we go through our presentation and speak to what we believe the value of GitLab is in helping address what all of these different systems are doing. So with that in mind, let's go right into GitLab itself. And what I'm showing you here on the screen is, let's call it the roadmap of what I will be showing you. So from left to right, we're going to be exercising different parts of the application to speak to these concepts, ideas, a definition, planning, creation or coding, reviewing, testing, releasing, and certainly measuring as well. So keep those in mind, keep that frenzy slide in mind, and let's talk about GitLab. Let me speak to the following. Let's begin this particular part of our conversation. Say, as I move into the role of, let's say, a product owner, a team lead, a project manager, I have a number of developers working with producing an application in the cloud, something that we deploy, obviously, as a web app. And as I'm looking at the latest version that is in production, I'm noticing the following. Obviously, a very simple convention, but hello world with a blue background. This catches my attention right away because our application, our corporate branding should have a gray background. So likely somewhere in the configuration, somewhere in the code itself, we're pointing to a different color scheme. This is something that needs to be addressed quickly. So that idea in this case is addressing a bug, but likely it could be a feature, it could be a user story. I'm going to take a quick screenshot and send it to our developers. Now, thinking about how things usually flow as part of the development lifecycle, certainly I can open up my issue tracker, my project management system, and start entering in that problem, that bug. In terms of social engineering, chat ops, just conversational development, many times beyond having to change context or switch to a different application to accomplish something like getting this process started, I can just use an application like, in this case, Mattermost. Mattermost is very much the same thing as Slack. It's a chat application for Teams. Mattermost comes bundled with GitLab. So in that sense, it's an application that once deployed internally has the same level of security as GitLab. So this is what we use as our corporate standards. I'm starting the process here because it's the quickest way for me to say or enter that issue. And I'm using / commands to start entering that issue that's going to create it in GitLab itself. The corporate branding scheme is incorrect in the main page. Please check the color. As simple as that. I have now created an issue without much more description other than the title itself, but it's now part of our backlog. So our developers are going to have visibility into it. Now, to add additional issue and to speak to some of the capabilities in GitLab as it pertains to planning, to defining, to creating that backlog and making sure that the developers know exactly what they need to do, let's switch over to GitLab itself. I'm on the landing page of GitLab. This is our particular project. Ruby app is the application that we're currently developing. And here in my issues list, I have that brand new issue at the very top that I just created via Slack, or in this case, Mattermost. I'm going to adjust a little bit of definition via a comment. I could certainly edit the description as well. As you would expect with a system like this, I'm going to attach that screenshot that I just took. And also, because I believe that this is actually a bug, I'm going to use Markdown as one of the features here within the issue description, the comments, to quickly create that label that could quickly categorize and make sure that our developers know exactly what we're trying to put into the system. So this is my very quick additional comment as part of that definition. If we're thinking in terms of project management, project planning, there are some features and functionality that are available as well. For example, assigning the work itself to individual developers, whether it's a single developer, whether I'm assigning this to myself, or perhaps whether my developers are doing pair programming and are taking on this issue in pairs. So there's that option. Milestones in GitLab allow us to define time-driven blocks to which we can assign issues. The value in using milestones is that we can define that milestone to encompass a number of issues. Those could be bugs, those could be features, those could be user stories. And it allows us to track the delivery of these issues within that milestone with the corresponding code that is associated to those issues, merge requests, as well as any additional test results and so on. Due dates allow us to set due dates for the issue itself within that milestone, particularly if we have certain SLAs in mind that we need to keep and that we need to adhere to. That's going to help us to track that issue against that due date. It doesn't look like my label took, but labels, whether you're assigning one or many, are something you can define given the right permission set on the fly, or just choose from the selected labels that already exist. In terms of project management as well, weight may be important if we need to associate a certain level of effort that's going to be required. That effort could be story points, could be a rough order of magnitude, or hours. In any case, that weight is going to help us look at issues of different sizes within that backlog. So very briefly, and as I mentioned, this is a quick example, and there's a lot of power and functionality here. We just walked through some of the different additional attributes that we can assign to our issues as we go through the backlog and do the planning and refining of that backlog itself. Now let's switch context. Let's switch roles. As a product owner, I just put that information into the system. I began the process via Mattermost, my Slack alternative. Let's talk about a developer from that developer perspective. Using a different browser, I'm logged in as Chloe. So one of our developers in this particular team, Chloe, is looking at issues as they're coming into the board. She's one of our team leads, and she is making sure that anything that comes in with a higher level of, let's say, urgency, perhaps a higher SLA, is addressed right away, even though we do have, as you can see, a number of issues already in that backlog, a number of user stories and features as well. Here's my brand new issue that we just entered. I'm going to put it into doing because I'm going to start reviewing as a developer what exactly is the problem that is being reported here. As a side note, the issue board itself here is very much representative of a Kanban board, of a storyboard for those using Agile and Scrum as well. This is configurable, and within a single project, you can have as many boards as you need to, depending on how many teams are helping you deliver on that particular project. The boards themselves are quite flexible in that there's no workflow required to drive that particular flow within the board itself. It is driven by the labels that you select. So you create that workflow, and the team itself manages to work through that workflow, as in the case of what we see here, which is very simple. Back to being Chloe, back to being that developer. Checking what the issue itself is. Certainly, that is not the correct color. I can see right away by the screenshot itself. I want to make sure that Victor is targeting the correct environment. So within GitLab, because we're managing that entire development lifecycle, I can go directly into the environments that are hosting our code. In this case, I have two currently active, our staging environment and production environment. Let's check production quickly. Sure enough, it is blue. It should not be blue. Let's get to work on this particular item. Because I'm a developer with enough rights within the system as a user, I'm going to create a merge request directly from this particular issue. By creating a merge request with the GitLab workflow, I'm creating a specific branch into which I'm going to be working with the code itself. I want to leave our master branch alone. I'm not going to mess with that. And anything that I edit, anything that I add or modify is going to live within that branch until the time comes when I can merge it back. Once it goes through approvals, once we go through some testing and review whether that code is exactly what we want out there. As a quick comment, we went from the issue and created a merge request directly from that issue. Notice the title at the top. That issue has been renamed with a prefix, WIP, for work in progress. That allows us to differentiate within our merge request in the system which merge requests are currently being worked on. All the developers on my team may be working on their own specific merge requests. In any case, this signals right away that this is what I'm working on. It is in progress, and please do not try not to alter the code that I'm working with for this particular merge request. It created a specific branch with the same name as my merge request and the issue itself. This doesn't have to be the case, but I'm using this as a default to quickly identify the branches with which I'm working. Certainly different teams are going to have very specific branching strategies So we will adhere to those where needed, of course. And additionally, starting the merge request process begins the process of continuous integration and a little later on, continuous delivery and deployment. What that means is that given how we configure a system for CI, for continuous integration, with GitLab, we have the option to create review apps. A review app essentially is a virtual machine running a container with the code in our current branch, the branch with which we're working. That branch and that review app is going to contain all the code that we're modifying so that we can use all of our different testing systems, all of our different review processes within that review app before we actually move that code into production. And because the process has already been kicked off, even though I haven't made any change yet, that review app is ready for me to start working with it. And I'm already starting to track metrics in the case of memory and so on. And one last point regarding those review apps and this particular merge request using that review app. Now we have a specific environment with that link that takes us to that review app within our Kubernetes cluster. Now we can start testing any changes in real time and directing any additional review by other team members, by other business level users to that particular environment. Let's begin our coding now. I'm going to go back to the repo itself. I know exactly which file I need to work on. That's our server RV. And of course, as a developer, I would often or most likely use my IDE or work from the command line. Using the interface, though, particularly for a case or for a edit that is as easy or as simple as this one, I'm just going to effect or create that change directly on the web UI. I'm going to switch over to the branch where I'm working. I'm going to put that file in edit mode. And specifically, this is the one very minor change that I need to make. Slate gray is one of our corporate schemes, our corporate branding. And committing the changes back to the branch. Now that I've done this, let me show you what is happening with our CI environment. Let's go to CI/CD, specifically pipelines. Here we have one of our pipelines running at the top, the one upon which we just effected that change. That new code is being merged into that branch that is going to be running on that review up to which we pointed. I can go directly to that specific pipeline to look at the progress that is happening across the different stages within that pipeline. So we begin with a build of that review app and the code in that review app, have a number of test phases defined with GitLab and with auto-scaling runners. Runners are my processes that can run those jobs that are part of that pipeline. I can, with auto-scaling, I can run them in parallel so that I can finish these jobs quicker. And thereafter, now I have a pipeline, or rather a review app, that is ready for additional testing, for additional review processes. If we have automated tests, if we have additional functional integration tests that we want to run, we have that review app ready for us to do that additional validation. All of this type of configuration, and this is a very simple pipeline, it can certainly get very complex, is driven by a YAML configuration file. Let me show you that because this is important. Going back to files, gitlab-ci YAML file is the file itself that tells GitLab, for this particular project, I may have hundreds of projects. For this particular project, this is how I need you to build those review apps, that environment, particularly if I'm going all the way from that original idea all the way to a production environment. The YAML file works in the following way. At the top, this is what we're getting from our local registry. the Docker image for this particular application. It deploys it to a local Kubernetes cluster, which is where we're managing our different containers running code. In the stages section, we define those stages for the pipeline itself. These are those stages that you saw already in process for the code that I just committed to my review app. And having created that definition of those stages, for each of those stages, then we can add very specific commands. Once again, remember, it's a simple example, so I don't have too many scripts or too many additional parameters running for each of those stages. But this particular YAML file is what drives how we're going to be building the software into those virtual environments for testing, and at a later point for actual deployment to production. Going back to CI/CD, let's now look at environments. This is my latest review environment, created a moment ago through, in that automated fashion, through that YAML file. It's taking just a moment to refresh the information. Let's go and check what that environment looks like in that review stage. This is exactly what our product owner wanted to see. Hello world with that slate gray background. At this point, say following that workflow, we're making the changes. We are looking at the issues. We have done some upfront planning real quick. Now we have an environment that can be used for testing. I can direct any additional testing or review processes to that environment, that review hyperlink, and certainly can communicate back to our product owner that this is ready for their review. I could have also included here the hyperlink. I should have done that. Now, certainly now the product owner may be able to see that change in real time in that review environment and say yes or no. Just to drive that, I can say, and additionally, as we're doing this, say from that project lead perspective, or perhaps as someone that is doing that code review up here on that particular code that was modified, I can look specifically at the merge request, and I can drill down into the detail of what was changed. This is that same request, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of that product owner, remember, so not the developer. I can look specifically at the commit, drill into the detail of what that commit was. So look at the code specifically that was changed. Inline comments in the code itself are going to be kept and managed through that merge request. So the visibility is going to go from the code level all the way to, if you will, to the business level. It's going to be tracked through the system. And I'm also going to be able to look at the pipelines, the progress, if anything has failed or passed, drill into the specific detail or what occurred at that level, say at the review level, all the way to the terminal, very low level of what specific changes are happening within that environment. And because I believe that this is indeed what we wanted to do, what we wanted to accomplish, I'm just going to let a developer know that this looks good. This is good to go. Something that we did not explore right now, but that it's available in the system as well, is a concept of merge request approvals. That allows you to define for only certain users, say for, in this case, that team lead or that project or product manager, the right to approve that merge request, to do that code review and say this, as in the case of this is good to go. This was a very simple example. You can have one single person that approves, or a number of different team members that need to provide that approval before we continue doing or continue committing to a later stage environment. Switching back to the developer level, back to the merge request. As a developer, as a team lead, I know I have, it looks like this is exactly what I wanted to do. I'm going to resolve the work in progress status. And that is going to allow me now to merge my code back into master. Now, with our YAML file, we also had a staging phase in our pipeline. And one of our CI/CD strategies is that of using Canary deployments. So if you're familiar with Canary deployments or blue and green deployments, that allows us to do additional testing at the actual user level. We know that the code worked in those review app environments. Certainly, once it comes out into production, we may find additional things that we did not consider. Hopefully, we didn't. But with those types of environments, we can still make sure that our users are seeing what we believe is the correct version of the code. But if need be, we can either roll it back or just gradually deploy that final code to all of the pods in our virtual environment. Let me show you what that means in that CI/CD environment. So now in the staging area, we have the new code, our recently committed change, that gray background. Production still has the blue code. Let's deploy to Canary first. And Canary allows us to just deploy to a number of pods, however many we select, so that users are going to access either one or another version of the production code. In this case, I only have 2 instances for my Canary deployment, but I can certainly exercise more. In this case, with 2 instances, 50% of the time, a user accessing the application is going to be directed to one of those 2 versions of production, the Canary deploy version, which has the correct code, or the original production that still had that blue background. Let me show you what that means. This is still blue. Now it's gray. I'm simply refreshing my browser. So that means that 50% of those users will be getting 1 or the 2 versions of the application. Because no other user is reporting a problem with that brand new version, then now we're ready to do that final deploy to production and close that loop. It is currently executing. It's now deploying that code to our production instance. What that does is that for any of the review apps that were in play throughout this entire process, we're going to be removing them so that we don't have too many pods out there running, not doing much of anything. All the runners, all the jobs that we have out there to execute on phases of the pipeline also can remain there and wait for additional jobs to execute, or we can time those so that they just pretty much go away and we just launch them whenever we need them. You have real-time metrics for monitoring as well. So for the production environment, targeting our Kubernetes cluster, we're interested to know how our changes, whether it's at this stage of production or any of the previous stages for review, staging, and so on, we're going to make sure that we have a clear understanding of how these changes are affecting that CPU utilization, that memory usage at that environment level. And lastly, let's go back here. Now we have a brand new page in a full production environment. We've gone through all those different stages of our pipeline. Now we're back to the production world, where this is exactly what we need to be delivering to our users in the real world. Some of the additional metrics that we haven't considered, and there's a good number of them additionally. At a very high level, your cycle analytics. Cycle time is really one of your premier metrics to understand how much it's taking you to go from that idea to production. From the time that you have that specific issue, that feature, that user story in a backlog, how long is it taking you to deliver it to your customers? The true definition of done, once it is in the hands of your customers or your users. Cycle analytic lets you do some of this high-level measurement of your metrics within your particular project at the issue level, at the plan level, code test, review staging, and production as well. Currently, that cycle time is about 20 minutes on average from the time that we enter that idea to the time that we deliver. We saw some metrics briefly at the environment level as we're deploying to our environments, whether that's review, staging, or production. And additional metrics, let me take you back to, I'm going to look at this from the lens of that product owner as well. Let's go to the overview. Because some of the metrics that we don't have in place currently to show you, once again, this is a simple example. We have code coverage through code climate. So we are targeting and we are getting real-time results. These are links that take you back to the specific code that is triggering that status of passed. Give you a rating or a score rather on code coverage to code climate. And I have another example of that. I'm looking at a static page, by the way. This is just reading from my README file, this particular project. And these are some of the metrics that I thought would be valuable to show. In the case for this particular merge request, given the tools that we have in place with code climate to track that coverage, this is the coverage that we're getting on that code at that merge request level. And similar metrics at the pipeline level. All the metrics that are valid. And this is in terms of the planning itself. We touched briefly on milestones. In the case of milestones, you can see the GIF is moving relatively quickly. Here you have a burn down chart. That means that we had for a particular project a number of issues associated with it. We had a set time based delivery for that milestone, and as such we're tracking that burn down chart and all of the issues that are considered within that timeline. So very briefly, I've taken you through a number of different phases, a number of different areas of the application. We considered looking back at our chart or roadmap, as I called it, where we started. We started with an idea that was that issue, that bug found by the product owner, something that had to be addressed, in this case, rather quickly. We looked at the issues themselves within GitLab, the issue being a starting point for whether that was that bug, a user story, perhaps a feature coming in the future, all the way to the epic level. But that definition allowed us to put in enough information to drive the development of what is it that we're trying to do for our customers, whether that was through adding additional attachments, labels, using Markdown for quick actions, and adding attributes. That idea and that definition also started from a chat client, in this case, Mattermost. Milestones, issue boards allow for the planning and also for the moving into action some of those items, some of those issues into one of our different stages of development. My particular issue would have only 3 stages to keep it very simple, but certainly depending on what is it that you're tracking beyond simple bugs, more like say in Scrum, a sprint level plan, those boards allow you to track from that visual perspective what is at which of those stages. We did some of our coding through the web UI, certainly for developers, using the command line, using their IDE. It's going to have the very same effect, but we looked through coding through the UI, through creating those those merge requests, and tracking that code from inception to completion. Review apps provide us with our review environments. Essentially, a code in an environment that we can target for additional testing, for additional review, without touching a production environment, and making sure that anything that we would move to production at a later point was certainly fit for consumption. We did some manual releases, and that is because we wanted to have a certain level of a safety net before we release to production. But we discussed briefly Canary deploys and also pushing a release to production. In this case, I did it manually. But thinking back to that CI YAML file, depending on the level of risk that some teams, some projects may want to undertake, certainly this process can be automated as well, provided we have the validations checks in place. And that YAML file is going to be very useful in helping us build in all those validation checks, whether those are unit level tests or additional tests of that environment. At a very high level, we looked at some of the measurements available in the system, from cycle time perspective, from measurement of environments, particularly in that Kubernetes cluster. And as a side point, we're using Kubernetes because it's native to GitLab, Docker containers, Kubernetes clusters, but certainly GitLab integrates with other systems for that final deployment. For example, AWS, Azure, and other cloud-based systems. Think back to that frenzy slide that we used as a beginning point for our conversation today. For the different aspects that we used in our roadmap, from left to right, idea to measurement, below them are some of the different systems that GitLab, and the systems and capabilities that GitLab has to address those different aspects of the SDLC. And once again, this might be getting old, but it was a simple example, but there's quite a bit of additional power in what GitLab can do. Overall, the main intent was to provide or to show how a single system can give you the visibility and the ability to collaborate for an entire team, all the way from the business users to the developers to our operations team members, encompassing all aspects of version control, aspects of automation, and certainly metrics as well. With that in mind, I say it's evident, given the business value that our users are achieving with GitLab. Our vision is to provide
Hey, Victor, I think we lost your audio for a moment. I think you just rejoined. Why don't you try again? Hey folks, I apologize for that. It seems like Victor's having an issue with his connection. I think we're nearing the end here, so if you have to drop off, that'll be fine. Oh, I think Victor's back. Victor, if you could. Hi, I think we just lost you for a moment.
And to the audience as well, let me know if you can hear me, maybe through the chat. I experienced some audio problems for a moment. Thank you very much. And I apologize for that little glitch. My headset just went dead for a moment. And also hope that this volume is okay as well. I was talking briefly about the business value in GitLab. We talked about, or I mentioned briefly the aspect of our vision, that of being one single platform for software development and delivery. The next thing that I was mentioning was that of everything that I showed you today with the different tools that are part of GitLab for CI/CD, for creating review apps, for metrics and so on. Everything, even Mattermost, that chat client, everything's contained within a single installation package, what we call our omnibus package. What that means is that we mean to make this easy to install. We need to make it easy or intuitive to use, and also to scale without effort. A single project is what we use today with a very simple, very sparse number of files that make up the code. But certainly for organizations that are hosting hundreds or perhaps even thousands of projects, GitLab scales to that level. And one of our prime examples of that is our own gitlab.com offering, where we're hosting thousands of projects at any given point. With that also, we aim to provide with a low total cost of ownership. make sure that the solution is a fraction of the cost of all those interconnected systems that we reviewed briefly to that frenzy slide.
Hey, Victor, if I could just interject.
We need to be a transparent company. You can go to gitlab.com, or rather about.gitlab.com, and have access to our roadmap, have access to our handbook, and understand how our company operates. With that as well comes agility. We release on a monthly cadence, and many of the features that are requested or that are pushed by our community are very easily and very soon make it to an actual release to the community as a whole. At the enterprise level, and today we'll be using the enterprise edition premium, even though we didn't do all too many on the capabilities of premium. These are some of the additional features on the screen that premium provides. These are specific to large organizations, those that have mission critical requirements. Certainly there's a good level of security, scale, and support in GitLab in and of itself. But with Enterprise Edition Premium, you have additional capabilities. For example, in terms of scale, data providing high availability, repository mirroring, and GitLab Geo capabilities for highly distributed organizations. I mentioned that we release on a monthly cadence. One of the, or a couple of the features that were recently released in the past couple of weeks with GitLab 10.0 have been very well received by the marketplace. Two of these, the most notable, have been Auto DevOps, and in a moment I'm going to show you also group level issue boards. During the presentation, I showed you my example of a YAML configuration file for CI/CD. That is just one aspect of Auto DevOps. The YAML file itself, is not difficult to configure, but certainly something that you do manually. With Auto DevOps, the system provides you with out-of-the-box templates to quickly set up your end-to-end DevOps lifecycle, configuring your build, test, code quality assurance, review apps, deployment, and monitoring. All of that done through a number of automated processes. And that is meant to, once again, go back to that one vision of providing you that single platform, that single environment, where a code change can not only initiate a build, for example, and we saw an example of that, but also deploy the review app, measure code quality, help you improve the overall quality of your software, deploy to Canary production environments, all the while making this as easy as possible for your teams. The other notable feature among the many that were released with 10.0 is that of group level issue boards. We spoke briefly, and you saw my simple issue board during the demonstration. For organizations in which certainly you're managing a large number of projects, interconnected projects as well, perhaps that are aggregating to a larger, say, program, or perhaps even portfolio. Group level issue boards give you capabilities to manage issues across all of these projects in a single view, with the ability to drill down into lower level issue boards, all the way down to the very detailed level of, say, a specific issue and all the corresponding information within that issue, such as merge requests, code commits, pipelines, and so on. So just a preview, or rather not a preview, just a couple of the features that we recently released as part of innovation to the marketplace. And Emily, I feel like I've been talking nonstop, which I have for the past half an hour or so. I'm very interested to know if there's questions or comments from the audience, anything that I can address before we end our conversation today.
Yeah, thanks. Hopefully you can hear me now. I tried to jump in before. It looks like you're no longer sharing your screen. So we weren't able to see the last couple of slides. Victor, can you hear me?
Are you done?
Awesome.
Let me know if you can see my screen now. It looks like it was offline for a moment.
No worries. Hopefully you can hear me now. So there are a couple of questions.
And Emily, I cannot hear you.
Okay, I'm seeing in chat that the audience can hear us both, so that's. I'm very sorry to everyone listening.
Another apology for everyone in the audience. Looking at my system right now, see if there's anything that I can do to change this. I don't believe that everyone can hear me.
So if he's unable to hear me, then I'll
switch to Windows. I have to say, just as a random comment, that I'm a fan of both systems, both Windows and Apple. So yeah, I could do that. Okay, Emily, I see that there's a couple of questions in chat. I see one of the questions in detail from Aman. Aman, regarding your question, given the unfortunate technical quirks right now, let me get back to you on that one with some detailed explanation of how this is accomplished or some examples. There's another question regarding integrating to Jira, keeping the issues in Jira and integrating with GitLab. Certainly, this is exactly this is how it can be done, and we have an integration with Jira, and this is how many teams are working with that. We can provide you some follow-up information on that as well. Is there an API integration with ServiceNow? I believe we do have an integration with ServiceNow, and that's for Ryan. Ryan, I will also send you that information as well. Okay, so I have a number of follow-up items. I've taken note of these, and let me do the following, because I know that Emily is not done yet.
Thanks so much, Victor. We just have a couple of ways here where you can follow up if you're interested. You can contact sales@gitlab.com for a personalized demo. Anyone on our sales team would be thrilled to talk to you about it. We'd also like to invite you to try a free trial of GitLab Enterprise Edition. We hope you're really excited to see what your team can do with it. We definitely are. And at any time, you can also look at our full product roadmap. Like a lot of the materials about our company, this is completely open. You can look at it any time and see what's kind of scoped for the next 3 months, the next 6 months, and even after that. It does always change, but it's a pretty good idea of where our product team's heads are at. And that is pretty much all. I'm also going to chat you a link to a survey. We'd really love to hear what you thought of today's demo. We'd really appreciate your thoughts so we can make this as useful for everyone as possible. I just chatted that. That is all for today. It looks like there's a couple questions coming through chat, so I'm gonna excuse me. I'm going to chat to Victor so he can take a look at those questions. Sorry for the sort of clumsy handoffs here.
I see another question regarding when subtasks will be implemented both in the community and enterprise editions. Future state within a roadmap, and actually within the next couple of months, really, you will start to see some of our features that pertain to program and portfolio management coming out. For example, we're introducing epics, and I mentioned this just briefly as a side point, but those, I believe, are really the beginning of getting to a system that not only supports all the aspects of the SDLC, but certainly also aims to help at a higher level with some of the planning and management and tracking. With that, I can certainly see how not only subtasks, but epic and issue relationship will be able to help with that particular question. Ryan, we do have an integration with Jenkins as well. And as part of my reply to you, I will send you with links to that integration.
All right, I think that's all for today. I'm going to go ahead and close out. Never mind, there's more questions coming in.
Another question is, in terms of boards, is it possible to log the number of boards in a given project? I'm interested to know if that means being able to log the number of how many boards can be created in that project, or maybe within the project who has access to those, if it's part of a, say, a larger context. And I'm thinking group level issue boards. Okay, have some clarification. If we have group level issue boards, let me follow up on that as well. My list of follow-up items is getting longer. Can we use these across any project and have them locked in that project so they cannot be changed? Boards themselves, issue boards for a single project, are locked within that project. That same board cannot be reused or accessed by another project. With group level issue boards, these are aggregated at a higher level. Let me know if by chance that is that is where you're going with that particular question. When I say locked, not to allow the boards to be movable or changeable. Only certain users will be able to change a board, and that means adding additional columns, adding additional labels to that board, or rearrange it. So I guess the answer is yes. Provided that you have a certain level of, let's call it process, with who is making those changes. So once you have only a certain number of users that are making those changes, the configuration, the setting up of the boards themselves, no one else will be able to change them. And then that board itself, until that type of user updates it again, will remain as is within that specific project, and no one else will be able to make any changes to it. Hopefully that was helpful and not confusing. But if it helps, we can also send information on board configuration, use cases, and so on. Excellent, we'll do that. Everyone, thank you very much for your attendance. Another apology for the technical quirks, but thank you very much for the questions. We have follow-up items on our end for all of you. Hopefully this was helpful. We conduct these webcasts on a regular cadence, so certainly attend another one, which will have new features and new capabilities to showcase as well. But thank you very much, and hope to hear from you again.